Welcome to the latest episode of the CIH Podcast. My name is Megan Hinch and I work in the Policy and External Affairs team at CIH. Today we're joined by three fantastic guests from a conversation about MMC and innovation in construction. So our guest speakers today, we have Evette Prout, who's Business Development Manager at Kind & Co, Katie Rudin, Housing and Innovation Director at Akerlof, and Trudi Sully, Industrialised Construction Director at Mott MacDonald. So just to introduce our topic a bit today, we'll be talking about MMC, which is Modern Methods of Construction for the long acronym, and we'll be talking about innovative design as well. So with the government's target of building much needed homes across the country, we know that we must innovate and maximise opportunities to build good quality, affordable homes. It might require a bit of myth busting this episode, as we know the sector can be a bit nervous about trying new ways of doing things. So just to do some myth busting from the get-go, we know MMC is not just about modular homes. It encompasses a variety of techniques, and there are 7 types just in MMC itself. So it's not just about the stories you've seen in the news, there's lots of different ways of it working. MMC is also very flexible and customizable, so it's not just less flexible than traditional build. And the myth that no one is using MMC or innovative building techniques or designs is wrong. Our guests today will demonstrate some of the interesting approaches going on in the sector, and hopefully you can learn from them. We know with the skills gaps in the sector, with the high government targets and the stretched business plans, it's more important than ever to think about outside the box to boost the delivery of new homes. So we hope today can share some examples of best practice, and you can take away some lessons that can go into your own work. So I will move on to our first question for our speakers. So what do you think are the perceived challenges around MMC and new construction methods? So are these challenges real, actual barriers, or is there a bit of myth busting needed on those? Katie, I'll go to you first.
So I think what happens quite a lot is, and actually I think it's great, Megan, when you were describing that there are multiple types of modern methods of construction, because I actually think that is what is forgotten quite a lot of the time. And everybody focuses a lot on the physical technology and solutions and are expecting, I guess, these kind of oven-ready boxes to just be delivered out of factories, as they have seen cars, planes, and the likes, which I guess the sector gets compared to quite a lot. But ultimately, I think the real challenge is behaviours, and that's not actually seen, I think, by most people as a thing that kind of is the challenge, and is probably where there's a bit of a problem there, and a bit of kind of like we need to square the circle. I think we have boards, particularly for housing associations and registered providers, who have been burnt in the past by some of the providers that have gone under, but actually a lot of those failures were to do with the system that they sit within, which is one that isn't particularly good to deliver at scale if you're doing something slightly different from a volume house builder. And so I think it's no surprise that we probably are where we are. And so for me, what I hope for in the next kind of 4 years, hopefully shorter term than that, is that we actually look at business models that can really help these providers, particularly SMEs, because most of them are small businesses that are trying to kind of do something slightly different, and we need to really help them to unlock a system that means we get long-term affordable housing at scale like we need right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Katie. And like you say, that's a good point. A lot of it is SMEs, and we know that they are struggling, so it's really good to support them. Trudi, did you have anything else you wanted to kind of touch on those barriers point?
Yeah, and I think, Katie and I work a lot together anyway, and I know Evette, so we're all going to be on the same page, but possibly some slightly different perspectives from the environments that we work in. And I think, again, reflecting on what you said about the variety that there is within MMC, it's really important that, and I think that you mentioned myth busting as well. That's one of the huge ones. There's still a lot of misconception, misunderstanding, and actually misrepresentation about what can be delivered and how it can be delivered. And the industry as a whole, if you just look at construction, at the broadest sense, there's a huge amount of challenges in terms of skills shortages, in terms of margins, in terms of materials supply, the geopolitical situation that we are all very aware of. And that makes any organization and any industry tend to be quite risk averse. And so when people are asked to do something differently, it can be overwhelming or just too much to take on. However, that is also sort of part of the myth busting, because modern methods of construction, although there's huge amounts of progress in technology capability and processes and approaches, MMC in its purest forms has been around for over 100 years already. It's how it's integrated, and actually that's one of the big shifts we need to see, is the integration of these processes and approaches into mainstream construction. It's not a whole different ballpark. It is about actually just modernizing construction overall. And that's where we're going to really start to be able to make the differences, and people are going to be able to start to bring it into their everyday practice. So there are lots of challenges, but actually everybody has lots of challenges. So looking for ways to help do things better and deliver better results, better outcomes and better buildings is really going to help everybody and help us deliver our housing targets.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that actually I think often we see it as a really new, scary thing, but this has been around for a long time. And also, it's like you say, this is why I want to MMC and innovation more generally, because it's not just what people think about. It's that broader point of how can we modernize, how can we make sure we can work to our best of our ability to build those homes we need. It's not just kind of that off-site manufacturing that everyone thinks of immediately, which is not a bad thing, but it's not the only thing, is it? So just Evette, on that point that we were just talking about, on kind of the misunderstanding, the sector feels a bit burnt, a bit scared, wary of kind of that trying new things. How do you think we can build up that trust? How do you think we can make the sector believe that this is a good thing? It's not a scary thing.
Yeah, I agree with what has been said, and it's important to have early engagement. It's really important that MMC is not an afterthought. It's about looking at that project and what will work best to deliver the outcomes we're looking for. So speaking with manufacturers early and trying to understand the market, what is out there, who has the expertise, who can you refer to, especially in your teams. You don't have that confidence, you've never done it before, but you would like to. It's having that open-mindedness and reaching out to those in the sector who are either manufacturers or who are consultants working with them, or contractors who have delivered the projects in collaboration with the manufacturers, and saying, what has been your experience and how can we work together? And I think breaking down those barriers where it's not just, oh, okay, we've designed a project and this might work for modular or a panelized system, or, you know, it's about thinking early on, how can we actually optimize this development, this project, and use a variation of the categories. You know, like Katie said, it's not just modular, it's not just panelized, there's 7 categories. And I think it's actually doing a bit of research. What do those 7 categories mean? And it's very relevant to us in the sector in terms of growing and innovating to understand what that means. You know, there's a breadth of things that you can look at to make your project better and get the outcomes you're looking for.
I'll just jump in there. I think, you know, the 7 categories were defined in a framework developed with government to help us to understand different approaches in different ways. And that's still widely used, and rightly so. But sort of going back to what Katie was saying earlier, there's a real importance in looking at beyond. So the categories are about how we deliver. So ways of actually delivering assets. We need to actually expand. And my job title has industrialized construction, and that's still confused. Terminology is still a big challenge for us in general. But one of the reasons that term has come to the fore is because the need to look beyond the products and the process of the delivering side and beyond it. Katie mentioned the business models. And again, this can feel overwhelming, but actually to really effectively modernize the way we deliver our housing, we have to look at the whole ecosystem, right from, as Evette said, that early engagement, but planning, the design stages, consideration of what approach is actually going to deliver best value. And that might not be MMC as we define it amongst those categories. It might be something different. And that flexible approach and early consideration of where we generate value is a very important concept that is often missed and is often associated where things don't actually work out well because there hasn't been enough consideration. And there are barriers in terms of the planning, in terms of the permissions, in terms of the knowledge and understanding and application, the project management. So it is a whole system transformation that we are working through, but there are a lot of people doing it very well.
I think for me, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, True, because actually we have, the whole of the housing system has so many constraints and problems happening within it. But you look at what's happening at governmental level, they're really trying to help unlock pipelines. They're trying to make it more viable. They are trying to help with planning. They're looking at how we digitize planning. So I'm like, once all of this stuff gets through that bottleneck and we get to kind of delivering homes, specifically affordable homes, we need to be doing it differently than traditional if we are going to start to hit anywhere near the kind of 1.5 million homes, because we're going to have to be able to deliver quickly quality homes. And actually that's where, if we begin to look at the business models and we look at how does this work, how do we build the competencies and capabilities within our affordable housing providers, those clients, they can start to have those better relationships with not just manufacturers, but also their entire supply chain. So there's a better way of sharing risk. There's a better understanding of how you then embed lessons learned when things go through the process. And we start to create a system where there is trust, and it's not this kind of race to the bottom on price and race to the bottom on kind of people taking litigations against each other because something went wrong. Because I'm like, we're all trying to work towards the same thing, and everyone wants to be able to, I guess, enjoy their job and go home at the end of the day and be like, actually, yeah, I worked with a great team there. I feel like we're at a really opportune moment for the whole sector to really do a bit of a shift in terms of how we take that best practice and use different forums and collections of people to be kind of a better sector overall that hopefully inspires people to come in rather than one that people don't want to be in.
Yeah, and just to add, I think when I mentioned early engagement, I think we often miss the fact that we need to engage with those coming into the industry as well, because they're going to be the next generation who are delivering these projects and who are thinking and designing and coming up with the ideas that are taken forward. So even myself, when I started working in this industry, I was with different manufacturers, volumetric and panelized, and I did a qualification in modern methods construction, HNC, moving on to my HND, so high national diploma in MMC, just to give you that the theoretical side while I was learning the practical. And I realized it would, at one point I was the only one on that course doing it, and I was in with a construction management program, but there were colleges out there trying to deliver it, but at that time there wasn't a lot of uptake. It is growing, but in terms of exposure, if you're not learning that at an early stage and you're entering the industry and you don't have concepts about industrialization and about those categories you mentioned, then it's been quite challenging if you're already coming into a culture that is quite established and is very traditional, and that's what you've been learning for 3-4 years or however long your course is, and then now you're expected to change all of a sudden. So I think it is important that from a government standpoint, they also look at the education system and that early engagement with people who are coming into the sector, which really did help me, and I think it strengthened my support for the sector.
That's a really good point, Evette, and I think, obviously CIH, we're the professional body, we want to make sure that people are choosing housing, but part of that is showing this like new exciting stuff that's happening. It's not just kind of bricks and mortar and what you'd imagine. It's kind of all this new exciting technology and data and how we're doing new kind of methods, and that gets people energized, right? And that's how we get people into the construction. We've talked a little bit about the skills gap. That's a big part of this. So I think that's a really good point. And just something going back to what Katie was saying about kind of the moment we're in, I think you're right. I think it's a really opportune moment. I think we've got a lot of planning reforms coming through. We've got the new national planning policy framework. We've got all these things happening at the same time. But the government is really intent on trying to help unlock this system for the sector. And I think the new social and affordable homes programme, the bids are opening. It doesn't have a target for the MMC, which it did before, because they got rid of a lot of the targets, but it's still included in it. And I know Homes England are saying, please show us where you're using that. So it is definitely an opportunity for us to take advantage of it and kind of move forward.
Yeah, so on that, I think what would be great within this next tranche of funding is really collecting hard data on MMC and where it is working, and even where kind of maybe some of the claims that are there potentially aren't actually stacking up as we expected. Because I think one of the real issues of our sector is we have pretty ropey data of actually what's it doing consistently over projects, and different manufacturers obviously collect their own data sets, but I think it's looking holistically at where is it helping, where is it not, and where can we actually start to, I guess, use different policy levers to help it help in better ways, and where does it thread in? Because I think the last programme, although I think 22% of the homes that came through the last programme were modern methods of construction, Homes England don't have that next layer down of exactly what different types of MMC were used. And so it's actually beginning to look at what is being, because I think a lot of the houses built, you know, kind of, you look at the big house builders, they are using it more and more because they haven't got the skills. So more and more people are going down this route. People are accepting homes that are using different construction methods, but probably because it's being built by somebody else, they maybe don't realise quite how embedded it is through the whole system.
Yeah, really good point. And I think that data point we know comes up time and time again in the sector, doesn't it? So really good to kind of flag that actually we've got an opportunity with this new programme to have a look at it. Trudi, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, that this is something we talk about a lot in terms of metrics and data collection, and there's been reports written on it and recommendations. It's still really variable, and we do need to be better at that. But what I am seeing, so I judge several competitions, industry awards every year, and I've been doing that for about 8 years now, some of them every year for those 8 years. And what's fantastic to see is more recognition of that, and some of it is being driven by legislation around carbon, for example, but companies are beginning to get more savvy to the fact that for them to be able to grow and to be able to invest more, they have to really start proving the value and the benefits from this. So in those awards, I'm starting to see companies coming through and really actually providing good data and metrics about the improvements and the realities of it, where they are saving on materials and time, and being able to work more efficiently, greater productivity. What we're not very good at is doing that more broadly, and actually recognizing that sharing some of these results, sharing some of our lessons and where we've got gains with others, even competitors, actually helps the industry move forward and helps individual organizations be more successful too. And that's still one of those cultural challenges we kind of need to get through and get past, because the more we prove the value of this, the greater confidence clients are going to have to ask for it, the more the industry is going to be in a position to invest in it, because there's going to be more certainty of a pipeline that they'll be able to deliver against. So we've got a lot of chickens, a lot of eggs, but actually there's great ways forward. We just need to be much better at shouting about it and sharing. And I'm going to do a bit of a name drop here, Katie. So 2 things. One, Katie and I have a LinkedIn page which is called No Country for Old Methods, where we share nothing but good news. That's just us promoting the good stuff, and we'll be doing more of that. But what I really wanted to bring in was the Building Better community of practice, which is being formed between Housing Festival and Building Better, and it really is that forum for to be a learning partnership focused on leveraging MMC, and there to help increase the supply of new high quality social and affordable housing. Katie and I are very happy to say that we have just been appointed as co-chairs of this community of practice. And it really is that it is about bringing the community together to help us move all of this great stuff forward. And I'm all about selling the good news. So it's something I just wanted to mention here, because I think this audience are exactly the sort of people we want involved and telling us their stories too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big part of what we want to do, right, is the sharing the best practice, sharing the lesson learning. We know as we're kind of at a point in the sector where we have to work together, we have to work in partnership, we have to learn from each other. That competition point kind of is not really as relevant at the moment. I don't think it's kind of, we know we have to work together. Everyone can build the homes. It's not like you build this home and I can't. It's working together. So that's really good. Thank you, Trudi. On that point on kind of best practice and sharing case studies and stuff, Evette, I know you do quite a lot of work on like kind of MMC and things. Do you have any examples of where this has worked really well, where you can kind of flag things that people might want to know or don't know about? Just on that kind of best practice sharing.
Yes, so I mentioned before that I've worked with different manufacturers in the past. I actually started out on a graduate scheme with Porter Cabin Limited. So that was my experience, and it was mainly commercial work. That was a lot of modular projects, but they built schools, they built hospitals. My first project was on site with a hospital building like an MRI facility, and that was an amazing exposure. Now where I am now with a main contractor, Kind & Co, and there's been a few different roles in between that time. They have been around for 80 years as a business, and my role is client facing. So a lot of it has been traditional build. In recent years, they've moved into, for example, passive house, so very energy efficient residential homes. These are affordable social housing for local authorities and housing associations, and also looking at MMC. So one example is, I think, Sutton Council. We were working with them, and there was a time, I think it was back in 2018, where they hadn't built, I think their history was 50 years without residential builds in the borough. So a very long time. And then Kind & Co, as a main contractor, came in and supported them with their first residential build. And it actually was a timber frame project. So this was terrace homes, very beautiful looking actually, and timber frame. And then we're now back on site with them building a passive house development. This one is not timber frame. I think the market has changed. So obviously this is just one aspect of MMC and the categories that we spoke about. And this is like a product focus. But in terms of timber frame and that system, we're now back on site with them building a passive house development. So very energy efficient, but it's having those conversations about how can we innovate? You know, you haven't built a project in many years that's residential, and now you're coming back into the marketplace wanting to do something. And I thought that was quite a brave thing. And obviously they had to have a contractor that they trusted. But it was really amazing when I joined to hear that story and how they've really tried to innovate as a local authority, and how as a contractor, we've tried to raise our game to be able to deliver what clients are asking for. And that meant even before that development, Kind & Co working on their own development, which was kind of like a test pilot of 6 panels, very energy efficient homes in an area, I think it was in Essex. So there's been a lot of, walking before you can run, I would say. But we're now here in 2026 having a lot of a pipeline that looks very innovative. It looks like clients are pushing forward, but it just, holding their hand through that process. And there's other examples, but those are the ones that kind of stand out to me.
I think, Evette, that's such a lovely story, and that sort of evolution of a company, but also what the first thing you mentioned about where you started and delivering in other industries. And I think that's other sectors, sorry. I think that's actually a really important aspect to consider. House building is so often treated in isolation. And yes, there are unique sort of mechanisms in terms of the funding, the delivery and the market, but the capabilities and the practice. And actually, in many ways, MMC is forging ahead in other sectors. So we've got programs like the New Hospitals Programme, the Prisons Programme, education has been using MMC very significantly for many years. And because that's been done through the departments, the opportunity for continuous improvement and building on programme upon programme has really started to reap benefits for them, and they are starting to generate great results. And the way that they are starting to deliver a lot of it is highly transferable. So we really do need to be mindful of not reinventing wheels and actually really reinforcing that learning.
I think picking up on Trudy's point and kind of what you were talking about, that I think what we've seen in housing is people, we've had, I guess, a 5-7 year period where people came in with almost these unicorn ideas of like, this is going to be it, it's going to transfer, like the whole sector is going to be changed by it. But what we've seen in other sectors is actually it takes time. It takes the client being on that journey with them. We have a really complex, I guess, stakeholder map, I guess, within housing, where you've got like over 1,300 HAs with 2 million homes, then trying to build houses in a coordinated way, which makes it quite tricky. And I think where we're seeing real success is where people are just trying it and then learning and then trying again and then learning, and slowly, as you were saying about slowly growing up their kind of capabilities in-house. So the ones that always spring to mind for me are Magna Housing and the work they're doing down in the south, and Great Places up in the northwest, who are on a journey themselves and really trying to kind of push themselves forward, working with different manufacturers to deliver houses. And it's not trying to deliver 500 homes all at once. They might just start with a small site and then kind of, as they get more confident, improve that. So I think when we see stuff like that, for me, it gives me a lot of hope. So I'm like, actually, if everybody was beginning to take that journey, we would start to get to the place where other sectors are at the moment, where they're a much more kind of coordinated system. You also have the so automated architecture are doing some really interesting stuff that's actually challenging the way construction technology can help deliver sustainable, affordable homes, and are working with partners looking at that. So I think it's quite interesting when you see these people coming in and disrupting, but not in a way that's trying to disrupt thousands and thousands of homes. It's trying to disrupt in a corner and see, actually, I'm going to prove the theory here, and by proving the theory to you, I can then kind of start to grow and expand. So I guess it's that whole eating the elephant bit by bit rather than trying to do it all at once, which I think in our sector we need to be mindful of.
I think the small sites aggregator as well is something really worth shouting about, isn't it? So that's, if I get it right, Lewisham, Bristol and Sheffield councils looking at all of those small sites which are often overlooked or not desirable or not viable to build on, but through mechanisms to aggregate it and support it and fund it, the opportunity, and especially for local SME builders to engage in those environments, a great opportunity and a great example to come of how we can deliver more effectively.
Yeah, definitely. As an SME builder, main contractor working in the southeast, that is something that is vital. It's those relationships and taking those smaller sites that maybe other builders are not willing to look at, and partnering where it's appropriate with manufacturers, for example. And in my area in Barking, we actually work with Roll Along. So you mentioned Magna Housing, I know they've got a good partnership there. And so being able to see that even in my area, there's a volumetric building their residential home, which you wouldn't know, a block of flats. It looks great, and I think that really encourages me that even in your locality you can see that innovation and see that there's homes being built that are really needed for people in the area. And there's another example where there was a retrofit award that Co won. So there was a modular building already existing in one area, I think that was Southwark, that was transported to, I believe, Ealing Council. So that site was transformed into a new residential building, and won a retrofit award because these were existing modules, and that circularity, that is also important, part of the holistic view of affordable housing and not wasting resources, taking those modules, reconfiguring it, upgrading it, creating homes. And I think these were for people who were in quite desperate need in that area, and it saved the council a lot of money. So to be part of an organisation who's driving that forward is really important for me in terms of my exposure. And I'm excited to see other local authorities taking that on.
I think just picking up on something you said there, Evette, and just looking at where we are seeing successes, It's where there are partnerships forming, but they're long term. It's not just a pilot that happens once and then they move on to another manufacturer who does another pilot project. It's actually, okay, we've learned from the successes here and let's do another project together and let's do another project together. So it's unlocking a whole pipeline of sites together. I think we need to be very mindful as we go forward and, kind of try and bring in more, I guess, innovative ways of producing our homes, that we don't treat them as one-offs. They're actually a learning exercise to get to a better end outcome for our homes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's come through a lot here is kind of the baby steps of like just starting a partnership, see where it goes, and then you can build on it as it goes. And that's really encouraging for the sector, because if someone's listening, they're like, that sounds great, I have no idea where to start. I guess talk to someone who's done it before. Like, you can start with that partnership working, can't you?
There's an awful lot of opportunity to learn from others that are out there and through some of the industry bodies. So Offsite Alliance, Built Offsite, as I mentioned, the new Building Better Community of Practice. Go to those websites, go to companies that we've spoken about and others that are on those sites, look at their membership and learn from them. There's, all of the mechanisms are really there. What we really need to do is start moving into that, proving it, delivering it, and shouting about it.
And even Cope Marketplace is one that comes to mind as well. Just being able to see so many options in the market and things that I didn't know existed, and companies up and down the UK. That's really exciting, that in one place you can really go and find out. And again, it's doing that research, it's being open and having that mindset that, there's more to what I've just seen and to what I know. Let me explore, let me have those conversations, partner with people, ask questions. And I think sometimes if you just do a little bit of digging, there's a lot of information available to give you that confidence that there is another way. If it's appropriate for your site, if it's appropriate for that project, that there is an option that MMC might be suitable there.
That's brilliant, and hopefully very helpful for whoever is listening to this. So thank you. We could keep talking about this for a very long time. I know we could, but I'm going to slightly wrap us up with one question each for all of you. Well, I guess it's two parts. So I guess it's, first off, on that point, what's a piece of advice you have for someone who's interested in exploring this a bit more? And then if there's any sort of policy or practice change you think would unlock this greater use of innovation in the sector. So kind of a part A, part B. But Trudi, I'll start with you. That's all right.
So again, I think learn from others, go to trusted industry bodies and membership bodies, and like yourselves, where you can get advice and steer. On the policy front, honestly, there is so much. We've had so much policy come out already. I think we have most of what we need. What we do need to be able to do is bring it all together and reflect that ecosystem and find a more effective way through it all, and to bring it all together and then prove the value of what we can deliver.
Thank you. Katie?
So I think for me, it would be to reach out to people, even if you're like, oh, I don't know if they'll respond. The MMC sector is so passionate and very friendly. So I think just if you have nobody in the sector that's within your sphere, reach out and contact them, because they'll probably point you in the right direction for somebody else to speak to, or a group to join that might be kind of really helping you in your wheelhouse and help your knowledge. I completely agree with what you said, Trudi, that there is a lot of policy out there that I think people are trying to grapple with, and I'm not sure a new layer of policy would help. But what I hope for is that we start to look at the softer skills that are needed and create those behaviours, so that actually we start to support each other as a sector, because I think that's where we'll start to get the most traction.
Brilliant, thanks. And finally, Evette.
My experience was being around different manufacturers, going to events, doing a qualification. So there's a lot of things out there that can open up your mind to MMC. And like my peers said, being around people, speaking with people, asking those questions is really important. In terms of policy, I would say, for me, it kind of goes back slightly on a tangent about education. The policies, if we say it's really important to the infrastructure of the country and what we need to do, and it's a huge change that we need to make, then why don't we start at the fundamental part in terms of training and education about housing, about MMC, people understanding this is really important. There's a lot of opportunities. Come in, make a mark, and make a difference. And that would be my stance.
Well, I think that's a very hopeful place to leave it. So thank you all very much. And it's good to know we have all the tools ready to get going with this. So thank you to all my guests on today's podcast. And thank you for you to listening in. You can tune into our next podcast on CIH's website or our YouTube channel. And make sure you keep an eye on all the things CIH are doing as we share best practice and how we can deliver affordable, good quality homes in the future. Thank you.